about Yog Darshan. So it's a 3-hour retreat. We'll take a 15-minute break in between. And some of you have studied this Yog Darshan many times before, but still uh, the depth to these sutras are so much. No matter how many times we study, we always find something more into it. So just a little introduction and a recap of last time's retreat. The author of this scripture is Rishi Patanjali. It's written in a sutra form. Sutra means it's a very concise, to the point, no extra words in there at all. And each sutra or each verse is like a bead in this necklace. So it's very important to just make sure that how it's being connected with the previous and the next bead also. Then it makes sense. Okay. So again, it's in Sanskrit. Altogether 196 sutras, and it has been divided into 4 chapters. The first chapter has 51 sutras, and it's called Samadhi Pad. Pad means part or a chapter. Second is Sadhana Pad, the practice. That has 55 sutras. And the third one is called Vibhuti Pad. That has 56 sutras. And the last one is Kaivalya Pad, which has 34 sutras. Okay, so 51, 55, 56, 54. So last time when we were here in this retreat in November, we studied the part of the first chapter, Samadhi Pad, up to 18 verses. This is also called Ashtanga Yoga or a Raj Yoga, because yoga has 2 branches, Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga. Hatha Yoga is for the body and Raj Yoga is for the mind. So that's why this particular scripture, the very first thing Rishi Patanjali is telling us, that have a disciplined life. That means do Hatha Yoga every day. Make sure you live a clean life, disciplined life. Atha Yoga Nushasana. Then in the second verse, he talks about the definition of yoga. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So that means we got to have a complete mastery over our mind. Modifications of our mind. Vrittis means the modifications. Modifications means what those thought waves keep on producing. We got to have a control over them. And what really happens? We really know who we are. That's what he's promising us. Then he went into what kind of a vrittis, what are the vrittis, how many kind there are, how does this mind fluctuate? We talked about it in detail last time. Okay, so if you have the book, you should always go back and see, is it making sense or not to me? Because our mind does get fluctuated, something which is right in front of us. Sometimes we infer, sometimes we remember from the past, sometimes it's just a imagination. It could be a memory. With all those things, our mind gets sometimes disturbed happily, sometimes unhappily, just like a memory. Memory could be a good or bad. Or even during sleep, we can dream good or we can dream something awful also. But that does have effect on our mind. And when the mind is fluctuating, we forget who we are. So ultimate goal of yoga is to know yourself. So when we can learn how to control this mind, we can know who we are. Then he says, it's not just a one day or a one time practice. It's ongoing. So that's why he used the 2 terms, abhyas and vairagya. In order to know who you are, these are the 2 things we need to do. We need to practice and we need to detach ourselves. Detach from the temptations of this worldly life. Live in the life, don't get submerged into the life. Learn how to float in this life. So he said, keep on doing the abhyas, long-term abhyas. And I told you there was a beautiful mantra which we should try to memorize also. That is number 14. Dhirakal nirantra satikar sevito drid bhumi. We got to make our practice perfect. Keep on practicing regularly, sincerely, for a long period of time without any interruption. It's not just attending the retreat only, or a 1 month of practice or 1 year of practice. Practice until we achieve the goal. And goal is that we want to know who we are. Then he talks about this detachment from here and hereafter also, because sometimes we want to practice and we want to have heavenly pleasures. So he says those heavenly pleasures are also temptations in our mind. Rise above that also. And if you can do it, what really happens? We reach the samadhi. Samadhi is a absorption into the being. That's a samadhi. So in verse number 17, he talks about different layers of samadhi. Vitark, vichar, anand. So these are the different kinds. Anugamat, sampragyata. So with the help of the abhyas and vairagya, we reach these samadhis. Then he says the highest samadhi is where there's no seeds left. Seeds means seeds of the sanskaras, impressions of our karmas. Those are the sanskaras. They are gone too. Okay. So when there's no impression even, then of course we're going to see it clearly who we are. There's no doubt about it. So up to this point, we discussed it last week. So today's class, the way it's going to go, I'm going to start with verse number 19 and just keep on going. No interruptions, no questions in between, but after I'm done, I'll give you guys enough time towards the end of the first lecture and then towards the end of the second lecture also, you can ask questions. But let's move on to verse number 19. Bhav pratyaho videha prakriti leyanam. Bhav means birth. Pratyaya means modification or the cognition or these thoughts in our mind. That's a pratyaya. Videha. Videha means, see, again, the Sanskrit words are compound words. V means beyond, devoid of. Deha means body. So that means one who is not limited to the demands of the body. Videha. Or a person who has mastered this body. Prakriti leyanam. That means a person who has reached a state of equanimity even higher than that. Mastery over the Prakriti itself, beyond the body. So people belonging to the category of Videha and Prakriti lay are born with the capacity to attain the highest level of Samadhi. So that means some people are born with it. That means they have practiced it before. And when they are born, they already got these achievements. Because this is something which we're going to carry with us. All the practice we do, all the detachment we cultivate, it's going to go with us because we are doing it in the subtle personality of ours, in our mind and intellect and ego. So there are those who live beyond attachment to the body and mind. They travel through the world like waves that have crossed the ocean and now approach the distant shore. The spiritual journey is an ongoing process. It's not just a one lifetime. So this methodical practice of self-discipline and cultivation of this passion are at the core of this journey. When we see the body as a shadow of the mind and the mind as a shadow of the soul, our priorities shift. They shift automatically. Our attachment to the body, it just goes away. Because normally we are too attached to the physical pleasures through the body. But once we know that there is something beyond body, which is mind, then ultimately we know something beyond mind also, which is soul. Of course, our priorities change. And those are the people with this kind of a practice, they're called Videha. So a state of spiritual evolution at which we have transcended our body consciousness. That's a Videha. So some people are born like that because of the practices in the past lives. Okay? It's not that, sure, sometimes we call them lucky people. It's not that luck was given to them or this state of mind was given them. They practiced it and they brought it with us. And we all have the same opportunity. Okay? So, but the step beyond Videha is Prakriti Laya. So these are the two technical terms over here. So they have mastered the art of casting off the body voluntarily and suspending the mind in the domain of nature. These are the Prakriti lay people. And they remain absorbed until a suitable body, suitable place is ready for them. These are Prakriti lay. Okay, so Videha is definitely higher than ordinary level of people. But Prakriti lay is even higher than Videha. So he says that some people are born with this. To those whose consciousness is not as evolved, the people who are just starting on this journey, what should they do? Because we were not born with all this. So that's why in the next verse, he gives us a definite technique how to progress with the help of Abhyas and Vairagya both. Don't forget those two elements. Abhyas and Vairagya, but what else we need to do? How to strengthen our Abhyas and Vairagya. Verse number 20. Shraddha, Virya, Samriti, Samadhi, Pragya Purvak, Itre Sham. See, Itre Sham means in the case of others who were not born with those qualities. Okay, Shraddha means a faith, conviction, a trust. So that means trust in yourself, trust in this philosophy. Virya means inner strength, energy that makes us shine. That's called Virya. Samriti, retentive power, the power to recollect. Samadhi, Samadhi is a spiritual absorption. Meditation ultimately culminates into Samadhi. So this Samadhi is a state of meditation where the mind stands still. Pragya is the crystal clear intellect. The most refined knowledge is called Pragya. Purvak, preceded by, accompanied by. Itre Sham, in the case of others. So that means they are different from those people which were explained or mentioned in the previous verse. So he says, others, those who are not born with the extraordinary abilities also attain the highest level of samadhi, provided their practice is accompanied by conviction, inner strength, retentive power, all-consuming focus, and clear understanding. So these 5 elements got to be part of our practice if we want to reach to those higher level. Okay, let me repeat this definition, because this definition itself, this is a literal translation of the verse, but this itself opens it up for us. Others, those who are not born with the extraordinary abilities. Okay, so remember, extraordinary ability is Videha and Prakriti Le. See, if you remember King Janak, as a Karma Yogi, he was called a Videha also. So that means he was already at that level. Okay, so others, those who are not born with the extraordinary abilities to attain the highest level of samadhi. What is the highest level of samadhi? Where he said that there's no sanskaras left. That is the highest state, nirbij samadhi. Provided their practice is accompanied by conviction, shraddha, inner strength, virya, retentive power, samriti, and all-consuming focus, samadhi, and clear understanding, pragya. These are the 5 elements to this. So the preparation entails cultivating these 5 virtues, you can call them. 5 virtues. So the very first one, Shraddha. Shraddha really means I can do it and I will do it. That kind of a conviction, no doubt in your own ability. I will do it. Cultivate this conviction by reflecting on how fortunate you are to have a human body with an intricate brain and a highly evolved nervous system. Instead of thinking about, oh, I'm too short or too tall or too dark or too fat or too this, no. It's a body. The inside of the body, that's where the power lies. Don't just stay on the surface of the body. Inside, we all have that power, the same power. So the faith, cultivate this faith. Cultivate the faith in your self-endeavor. Remind yourself the law of action and reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. Do not get burdened with why didn't I get this and others got it. Remember that law of karma. Have a faith in yourself, and the conviction that you can reach your goal will help you persevere. And the second is virya, the inner strength, the vital energy that keeps us healthy and energetic. Be aware of the unwholesome activities which you get tempted towards. They really bring our vitality down. They bring our stamina down. You need this energy. A fragile body is not fit to contain a sound mind. That's why a yoga abhyasi, a yoga student who is on this path is very careful about all the discipline. Eating right, sleeping right, all the actions right, breathing right. Remember, all the senses which we have, they are very powerful tools. God has given it to us. We got to learn how to use them and how to control them. Virya is all about that. Unwholesome sensuous pleasures, they drain our energy. Actively replenish the sap of life In order to do that, you must commit yourself to a methodical practice of yoga. That's where Hatha Yoga comes. That's where pranayama comes. All the mudras which we learn, all the other cleansings also, we need to do them. So a fragile body is not fit to contain a sound mind. Remember that. And the third prerequisite or the virtue, he said, samriti, retentive power. It's very important in a spiritual practice. Revisit the moments of a high aspiration in your past. The time you spent with your guru. Any kind of a vision you had, revisit them. Recollect when and how you started your journey. Recall how clear your goal was at that time when you began, and think about how terrible you will feel if you drop your quest midway. This is what the Samriti is for. Samriti is a power, and we use this Samriti just for the ordinary things. We got to use this power, memory power, to stay on this path and to progress on this path. That's what Samriti is for. And prerequisite virtue, whatever you want to call it, fourth one is stay focused on your goal. Stay focused. One pointedly, that your mind has no room for anything other than this. Anything in life which takes you away from that samadhi, come back from it. Don't waste your time. Complete absorption of the mind into the soul is called samadhi. This absorption makes the mind calm and tranquil. And this tranquility allows the mind to experience the stream of joy, which is what soul is, which is what God is. Our mind just wants to go outside to look for the joy. It's right here. Take your mind there again and again. Have the mind experience this blissful experience. That's a samadhi. Cultivate and nurture these prerequisites: faith, inner strength, samriti. And you will see that this samadhi comes automatically. It doesn't take that much effort. And the fifth one, he talks about pragya. Practically speaking, pragya is clear understanding. That means knowing that everything in this world, including our own body and mind, are the means for gaining a self-understanding. That is pragya. These are all just tools. All of it. We are here to know ourselves. So knowing how to employ all our physical and mental resources in discovering our inner self, so that our lives will not be wasted. Otherwise, towards the end of this lifespan, we'll think that, what did I do? Why did I waste it? For something which I'm going to leave behind. That is pragya, to have a clear understanding, the purpose over here. Why am I here? So remember these five. To even memorize these words is very important. Now we see some people, they will move faster on this evolution. Others will not. Why? That's what Rishi Patanjali is saying. Number 21. Tivar samveganam asana. Tivra means intense, steadfast. Samveganam. Sam, see again, this is a compound word. Sam means complete, full. Veg means speed. So that really means moving with a full speed. Samvegana. Asana, in close proximity. So victory over mind is close to those with intense desire. So if our desire is intense, hey, it doesn't take that long. A burning desire to attain mastery over the mind is the first and the most essential attribute of a seeker. So that means all consuming desire. Other desires, sure, there are worldly desires, but this is all consuming desire that I need to know myself day and night. Keep on thinking about it. I've been living on this earth this time around for so many decades, and still I don't know who I am. That means we got to work harder, put more effort. Go back to the previous verse and see where it's missing. What do I really need to do? Then in the next verse, he further explains the intensity of the desire, because sometimes we think, no, I have intense desire. But he says, no, intensity of the desire could be three kinds. Mridu madhye adhimatratvat tato api visheshaha. This is verse number 22. Mridu means mild. So it's an intense desire, but it's a mild kind. It's a very tender kind. Then madhya means intermediate. Adhimatratvat, highest level, utmost, supreme. That is adhimatra. So these are the 3 degrees. Mridu, madhya, adhimatra. Tata api. Tata means due to that. For that reason. Api means also. Visheshaha. Outstanding. So it is very clear to those who are charged with the highest degree of intense desire. And even that intensity could be mild, intermediate, or supreme. Okay, so we got to look within that what kind of a desire do we have? And this desire, another term for this desire is called a mukshutva, desire to liberate, mumukshutva. So Rishi Patanjali is emphasizing the crucial importance of the desire for attaining victory over the mind. This cannot be given, it can only be earned. Nobody can just bless you with this. This is where our own practice comes into picture. Behind any accomplishment, there is always a force, which is called desire. The strength of your desire determines how easily you will attain your goal. Okay, so the desire. So he says the lowest grade of aspirants, that he called mridu. That means a mild degree of desire, which can be extinguished quite easily by fear of failure. You started out, and all of a sudden something happened, some thought came to your mind, I cannot do it. You just slip back. You stop practicing. You did not propel forward, even though the desire was there. So such people know the value of achieving the higher goal. They wish to attain it, but they do not have enough motivation to really start. Or even if they start, they stop quickly. And we see many people like that. It's not that they don't believe in it, but the desire to go upward is not that intense. It's mridu. And what is the intermediate then? Madhyam, or the intermediate grade of aspirants, if you want to call them. A person who's still not powerful enough to carry forward. They start their quest with a great enthusiasm, but when the obstacles come, they stop. So the first kind, they even thought about the obstacles, they just stopped. These, they started, intermediate kind, obstacles came, they stopped. The highest grade, adhimatra, those are the one with the intense desire which has consumed all other desires. There's only one desire, that's it. Desire to attain the highest. This is called a burning desire, or it's also called a smokeless fire that consumes all obstacles. No matter which obstacle come, I'm going to just keep on walking. Okay, including the fear of death. That kind of a desire. So they say, the rishis, they talk about, they say, if you have a desire like this, adhimatra, these people, they turn their face and they are there with the help of this kind of a desire. Now, in the next segment, he gives us, Rishi Patanjali is giving us a lot of other options also. How we can attain this highest level. Sure, intensity has to be there. Practice is needed. Vairagya is needed. But if we add something else also there, so that's why you will see that a lot of these verses, they end with the va. Va means all. So you can add this virtue also while keeping your practice, and you will see the improvement. You don't have to do all of them, whatever suits your personality. Okay, so number 23, Ishwar pranidhanad va. Ishwar means God, Almighty, the ruler. That's called Ishwar. Pranidhanat. Pra means the highest. Ni means completely. Dhan means surrender. Va means also. So victory over the mind and its modifications can also be gained through complete surrender to God. Okay, so that's where the surrender comes into the picture. So you just surrender to God, keep on practicing by just surrendering to God. And surrender is never complete unless we love. So loving God, that's why we talk about devotion from time to time. So Ishwar Pranidhanat means the devotion to God, love for God, loving God beyond anything else, above and beyond. But in the next verse, he gives us the definition of God. Who is this Ishwar? Who is this God? He gives a beautiful, complete definition for us to understand what is Ishwar. So verse number 24, Kalesh, Karam, Vipak, Ashyer, Aparaham Rishtaha, Purush Visheshaha, Ishwaraha. Kalesh means afflictions. That which causes suffering, Kalesh. Karam means action, duty, obligation. Vipak means result. Vipak. Ashyer. That's a resting ground or the intent. Aparamrishtaha. Not touched by or unstained. Aparamrishtaha. Purush Visheshaha. Pur means the body. Sha means that which resides in. Vishesh means unique. So that means one who dwells in this city City of life. This could be a city, our own body. It could be a city, this whole universe. So Purush Vishesha refers to the extraordinary souls. Ishvaraha. So this is also the verb ish, which means to be capable of. So capacity to rule, right, guide, capacity to become. So Ishwar. So it's a Sanskrit word. We normally just say God, but this is what it really means, capacity to rule or guide. So the unique being. So who is Ishwar? The unique being that rests in the body and yet is never touched by afflictions, klesha, actions, karma, the results of actions, and the repository of the subtle impressions of actions. And their fruits is called Ishwar. So the concept of God in yoga is radically different from the idea of God in the world's religious traditions. Okay? So in yoga, God is said to be dwelling in us. And in fact, God is us. Even though God is all pervading also, without beginning and end also, but God resides in us also. So in other words, God is seen both as pervading all that exists, as residing at the core of our beings. Indeed, God is the core of the being. That's why they say, be still and know that I am God. Be still. What do we need to still? We got to still our mind. Still the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga, chittavritti nirodha. So that's why this practice of yoga really shows us who we are. So stillness of mind is a prerequisite to knowing ourselves, knowing God, knowing this world, knowing our relationships with the world also. So stillness of the mind. So he says, surrender yourself completely to that power, the God. And Patanjali is very careful to outline the attributes of God in the very next sutra. He will give us the detail of it too. But over here he says, not afflicted by the kleshas. So he'll tell us what are the kleshas. Okay, we'll see that. And most of you are familiar with that. Avidya, asmita, ragdvesh, abhinivesh. Those are the kleshas. Okay. So, but first let's look at this verse. So first thing he says, God has complete knowledge, but also that God cannot be influenced by those who have incomplete knowledge. So that means no one can convince God regarding what is right and what is wrong. God is not subject to manipulations. Flowery words of prayer devoid of true feeling make no impressions on God. This means that on the path of self-surrender, you must be honest. You must pray to that divine one who resides at the core of your being, to infuse your heart and mind with the truth, inner strength, and courage. Okay? You cannot, you may be able to deceive the people outside, but you really cannot deceive yourself. You know what the intentions are. And God is not touched by I amness. Do not make that mistake of identifying the divine as a Hindu or an Egyptian or a Greek or a Christian or Islamic. No asmita in God. No identification like that. So on the path of self-surrender, you aspire to become like God rather than begging God to take part in your petty whims. God is not driven by sentiments, no favoritism, not attached to any particular form or name, likes or dislikes. Just remember that. God is untouched not only by ignorance, self identity, attachment, aversion, fear of death, but also by karmas, fruit of the karmas, and by the realm where the fruit and their results are deposited. Because all of that is Prakriti. Okay, so see the clear distinction between the Prakriti and the Purusha. That's why scriptures say, he without doing anything does all. And while doing everything, does nothing. Okay, so beyond the karmas, even while doing the karmas, and no repository of the reaction of the karmas on God. So when we completely surrender to such a divine being, means to contemplate on that intrinsic attributes. Cultivate these attributes in ourselves. Make our faith in this kind of a living reality. So surrender to God. So if we can do that, he says, you will attain to this highest also. So an aspirant whose heart is infused with the power of surrender attains freedom from all fear, doubt, here, right away. Okay. Then again, he is trying to explain what this God is, what this Ishwar is in verse number 25. See, I told you earlier, all these verses are connected. If you just try to understand just one verse by itself, you might not understand its in full import. So that's why continuation is very important. Never forgetting what we learned and see where we are going. So number 25. Tatra niratishayam sarvagya bijam. Tatra means therein. Niratihi shayam, without limit. Highest, absolute. Sarvagya bijam. Sarv means all. Gya means knower. Bijam means a seed. That means a knower of all. Knower of everything. Knower of everything means a knower of the past, present, and the future. That is knower of everything. So therein lies the seed of unsurpassed omniscience. So that means God knows it all. Untouched by the fivefold afflictions, God has one particular characteristics that outshines all others. So remember that in the verse number 24, all those attributes of God, that's what God is. And now another attribute, knows it all. So if that God is our soul, who we are is part of God, that means soul knows everything. We know everything. Why do we think that we don't know? Because we don't identify with the soul. We identify with less than what we are. We think we are the body, which is limited, or we think we are the mind, that's also limited, or the intellect. But if we can really identify ourselves with the Atma, which is part of God, it is omniscient. So according to Patanjali, the most distinctive characteristic of God is that in him lies the seed of unsurpassed omniscience. Surrender to a God who knows what your problems are, and he knows how to help you. That kind of a faith. that kind of a surrender. Because at this level where we are, we do not know who we are, where we are, what we are trying to know. So by surrendering, we'll have that knowledge. Because sometimes we don't even know what is the best tool to use to discover ourselves. So at that point, just surrender. So that's why Patanjali is advising us to surrender to God, in whom lies the seed of unsurpassed omniscience. So that's how he's trying to describe God to us. So he has the complete knowledge of everything that existed in the past, exists in the present, and will exist in the future also. It is so innate to this being. For such a one, time poses no barrier at all, because time is only for our mind. So surrender to such an omniscient being ensures that you are in good hands. Fear and anxiety, they are left behind then. Because normally we are afraid or we are anxious because we don't know the complete picture. But when we surrender, where is the fear then? Where is the anxiety? Because God's love for us is unconditional. Because if you are part of God, just like a child is a part of mother, love is unconditional. We are part of God. His love for us is unconditional. There is such a compassion in God. That compassion is the sole motivation for guiding and serving all of us. That's why God comes in a human form also, or sometimes in some other form also. It's the compassion of God which just brings that help at that time too. So this realization is overwhelming. Inability to contain the overwhelming experience causes you to surrender to yourself. And that's what we call gratitude. And when we have a gratitude towards God, a state of gratitude is powerful enough to fill our mind and consume all the afflictions. Whatever was agitating, whatever was making us fearful. So it almost becomes a tool for us. This surrender becomes a tool. You find yourself in a surrendered state. So God is the repository of the seed of unsurpassed omniscience, the seed of limitless knowledge that resides in him. He has no personal afflictions, no karma, no impulse to pay his karmic debts. Okay, so that is God. So this is how we understand what God is. Another way he is trying to explain what Ishwar is or God is. Number 26. Sa esh purve sham api guru kalen anavchedat. Sa means he. Purve sham, the previous ones. Api means even. Guru is the teacher. Kalen, time. Anavchedat, not being limited by. Unlimited by time. God is the teacher of all the previous teachers. This is a tradition to learn about God from a guru. But where did our guru learn about God? From his guru. He did from his guru. So that's why he says, where does it end? Where it started from? God. So God is the first and the foremost guru. Okay, so filling the mind with God in the quickest and the surest way to achieve the goal of yoga. See, the relationship between the God and the Guru has been sometimes it becomes a source of confusion. But Rishi Patanjali just opened it up for us. He said every Guru has a Guru, and the very first Guru is God. So God is the Guru of all previous Gurus because he alone is not limited by time. That's why. See, Anav Chedat. Because otherwise, no matter how healthy a Guru is, how long a Guru can live, Guru's body will ultimately dissolve into the Prakriti. So who is beyond the time is God. It is the light of God that is the true guide. And attaining union with this inner guide is the goal of yoga. And what is the name of God then? Because whenever we hear about somebody, we see the qualities of that person, the way he's explaining it to us. These are the attributes of God. But what is the name of God? Because we like to know the name also. And that is what verse number 27 gives us. Tasya vachkaha pranavaha. Tasya means of that. That means of God or of that special Purush. That's what Tasya means. Vachkaha. Which Vachka means which makes the unmanifest become manifest. So all this is like indicating the means or expressing, or it's also called a denoter. Pranava, the sound. Om. Pranava. Pranava means ever new. That means it never gets old. It just keeps on creating. Pranav. So Pranav is the denoter of that God. So that means Om is God in the form of sound. Sound Om is as pervasive as God itself. So that's why some of us say that Om is the name of God. You can remember God by saying Om. By repeating Om, one can gain a direct experience of consciousness beyond time and space. Attain freedom from ignorance. Get rid of all the kleshas also. By repeating Om, one can attain freedom from the bondage of karmas. Okay, so this is what representation of all sacred mantras also Om. Okay, that's why for meditation also, for the prayers also, we say Om. Okay, tasya vachka pranava. But how to say it? Do we just only keep on uttering Om, Om, Om and will reach that highest goal? Rishi Patanjali says no. That's why in the next verse, he gives us a further explanation how to say God's name, how to do this job. He says, Tat japa tat arth bhavanam. Tat means that. That means that special Purush, inner being. Japa, repeating. Tat, that. Arth, meaning. Bhavanam, to feel, to think. So repetition of that means to contemplate the meaning of that. So that means when you say Om, remember this is a name of God. Have a feeling of godliness inside you. So remembering or repeating the sacred Om means to contemplate on the existence of God. Because when we say God is inside us, God is in everybody, God is everywhere. So when we say Om, have those kind of feelings in your mind. So repeating such a mantra means filling our mind and heart with the feeling of God. So don't just mechanically say the Om, feel God. So more clearly, meditation on a mantra means to cultivate feeling for God and to concentrate our mind on that feeling. So bring the mind onto that. Because you are what you think. By the thinking of a mantra that is God, you become God. That's why they say the knower of Brahm becomes Brahm. The mind becomes clear, cheerful, radiant, one-pointed. It becomes a perfect conduit for self-realization. And another benefit he gives us in the next verse from repeating the name of God with that kind of a feeling and understanding. He says, verse number 29, Tataha pratyak chetnaha adigam api antaraye abhavacha. Tataha means thereafter, from that, from repeating the name of God. Pratyak means inner. It's like a directly, pratyak. Chetna, awareness. Adhigam, attainment. Api means also. Antaraye, obstacles. Abhav, absence. Removal, cha means end. Thereafter, the aspirant gains direct experience of inner being. And what else happens? Obstacles are, they vanish forever. So the obstacles on this path with the japa of Om, with the right way though, the bhavana has to be there that this is a name of God and God which is everywhere. There's no place that God is not. He is the creator of all. He is everywhere all the time. He says, you will gain direct experience and obstacles will remove too. So the technique has to be right in order to achieve the goal which he is mentioning with the help of this mantra meditation. But normally the charms and the temptation of the world is so much. We recite the mantra also to get something in the world. This kind of a technique he is giving it to us to get away from the world and become one with God, the ultimate goal. Because it's only after the mind comes in touch with this living light of the inner being that it begins to see the possibility of attaining freedom, which is our birthright. But we have created a misery over here by attaching it to this limited life, this worldly life. So the mind, he's telling us that mind can be motivated to seek the guidance from this inner light with the help of this Om mantra alone. So this jap brings us closer to the inner being, infuses our mind and heart with God consciousness. And we all know that greater the experience of this inner joy, the less we will crave the sensory pleasures and material possessions. And that's how our body, mind, senses, they won't add further burden on us. We'll have a greater chances of having a healthy body, composed and balanced mind. That's why they say this jap meditation helps. So in summary, we see that infusing our mind and heart with God consciousness brings twofold result. All mental faculties turn inward, because mind which was going outwardly with the japa meditation, it's going inward toward the center of consciousness, and all obstacles vanish. Obstacles vanish. And he's going to tell us what those obstacles are in the next verse. So he's making two bold and definitive promises here. Japa makes the mind become God-centered. But again, remember, with the right attitude, right bhavana. So japa makes the mind become God-centered. Japa brings freedom from all the obstacles. So this is the promise he is giving it to us. So again, take your mind towards that. Goal of yoga sadhana is to surrender to God. Replace our asmita with God consciousness. He says, by doing this, you will achieve that highest goal. Okay? But for that, the Shraddha is needed. So now let's look at what the obstacles are. Verse number 30. Vyadhi satyan sanshya parmad alasya avirati भ्रांति दर्शन अलब्ध भूमित्व अनवस्थित्व चित विक्षेप te antaraya. See the last word, antaraya, that means obstacles or impediments. So let's start with the first one, vyadhi. Vyadhi is first of all opposite to samadhi. See, samadhi is the goal. Vyadhi is opposite. So vyadhi really means ailment, disease. Whenever mind feels helpless, vyadhi. Satyan means mental dullness. It's like a becoming inactive. Sanshya, doubt. Parmad, carelessness, negligence. Alasya, laziness. Feeling heavy. Alasya. Avirati. Rati means craving, clinging. A means not. V means devoid of. So avirati means inability to maintain the state of mind free from sense cravings. So we are supposed to move away from the sensual cravings, but we are unable to do that. That's avirati. A simple way you can understand that you are becoming, moving towards the craving. You know that we should move away from the cravings of the senses, but you are moving towards them. That's avirati. So failure to maintain a dispassionate state. That's another way of looking at that. Bhranti darshan. Darshan means seeing, perceiving. Bhranti means illusion. Okay. So a false or distorted perception of objects. Bhranti darshan. Alabdha bhumitva. Inability to reach the goal. You are moving towards the goal, but somehow you cannot. You slip back. Anavastitvatva. Inability to maintain inner stability. It's like you are supposed to be constantly aware of yourself, the real self, the soul, but you tend to slide. You forget. Chit means mind, vikshep means distraction, te means they, antarai means obstacles. So these are all obstacles. How many are there? 9 of them. So 9 antarai. So what he is saying in the previous verse, if you do the japa meditation properly, with the right attitude, thinking about God, believing in that higher power, these obstacles will be removed. So that's why I said it's such a bold statement made by Rishi Patanjali. Disease, mental imbalance, doubt, carelessness, laziness, inability to withdraw, compose, and rest, inability to reach, grasp, or comprehend the goal, inability to remain grounded are the obstacles. These are distractions to the mind. And japa is the key to overcoming obstacles that arise in the course of spiritual practice. Okay, so twofold result of japa. Okay, so let me repeat it again because there's so many words over here. I gave you the individual meaning also, but these are like a little more elaboration. Disease, mental imbalance, doubt, sanshaya, carelessness, laziness, inability to withdraw, compose, and rest, hallucination, inability to reach, grasp, or comprehend the goal, inability to remain grounded are the obstacles. Okay, these are distractions to the mind. Okay, so again, japa meditation will get rid of these obstacles. All the mental faculties will turn inward. That's what happens when we do the japa. And the simple way of japa, he told us om. But make sure that your thoughts are all there that, yeah, this is God. Oh. Don't let your mind go anywhere else. Just always bring it back to the center of consciousness. Only then all the obstacles will vanish. Jap makes the mind become God-centered. That's what jap does. Okay, and that's where all the obstacles are. We bring the freedom from all the obstacles. Okay, so we should not forget the goal. We should not forget the goal. And I think I'm going to stop it over here because I do want to go a little bit more in detail on this. But it's a 11:45. Let's stop it here. And if any question you have up to verse number 29, because 30 I'll still elaborate on it a little bit more. Up to 29, we can talk about it in next 15 minutes. Then we'll take a little break for 15 minutes, then come back and try to understand more verses. Okay. So who has a question?
Manju Malhotra.
Namaste, Hershi.
Namaste,
So
Manju.
all these obstacles, they are all internal, right?
They are internal. Yes.
But the vyadhi, the disease condition, is that?
See,
internal?
disease condition also, don't they say that physical disease, the real root cause is mind?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, so many times, I mean, even these days, medical science says it starts from the mind first, the connection.
Okay.
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 So physically also you have seen, if the mind is fully absorbed into the light of God, this body heals. Healing power is inside us. Okay. So Vyadhi actually, sure, some places it's translated as physical disease, but it's mainly mental.
Okay.
Okay, Vyadhi. Yeah.
Thanks.
Prem has a question. Prem?
See, like if you break down that Vyadhi word, Manju, going back to that, V means special, subtle. Adi means disease, the physical. So that's why,
Okay.
okay. So when we say
Yeah.
Vyadhi, it is more like a mental.
Okay.
Okay. So this, sure, for the physical body, yogis, they say, do the Hatha Yoga. But now we are talking more of a mind. Okay. Yes, Jyoti.
Prem had a question.
हर्षी गुड मॉर्निंग जी
Good morning.
हर्षी आपने कहा ना ओम and then you also said japa is the japa should only be om to get all this benefit, or it could be any other japa that I may be used to?
You can, as long as whatever mantra you are using, you are creating the awareness of only God. There's only one God, right?
Right.
So if with that mantra you can think of the God, there's only one.
Exactly.
Everywhere, that light, it doesn't matter. But Om is the simplest one.
Okay.
Om, anybody can say Om. So that's why Rishi Patanjali mentioned Om. But that
I see.
Krishna or Ram or anything you can, but Om is the simplest one.
So it's the feeling and the surrender and the devotion that matters.
Understanding of it. It's the bhavana.
Bhavana.
What is in your mind? What your mind is infused with.
Okay.
Okay, that is the main thing over here. So if some other name can take your awareness to that level, it's okay.
Okay.
All right. It's going there. It's like if I want to go to the city, it doesn't matter which car or the bus or the train or the plane.
Exactly.
I want to just go there.
Exactly.
Right? So it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's a vehicle.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Poonam.
Yes, Poonam.
Ji, 19th Sutra, he says Prakriti Leyanam, and I did not understand that word.
Okay. So, see, he is mentioning two levels of achievements. So, Videha, you understood.
Yeah.
That is the person who has mastery over the body. Prakriti Laya means who has become a master of the entire Prakriti. Not just a Prakriti of your body, of your existence, but the entire Prakriti. You can be in the clouds. Individualized soul with the subtle body around it and waiting for the right moment. So you really have more control over this Prakriti. Where to be born, when to be born. Right circumstance comes and you come up for your further
So
achievement.
it won't be like Hanuman. It won't be that kind, because that is over the elements. So now if you're saying over the Prakriti, where you can be born or not be born, so you're going beyond that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like another inch up.
So can you give an example of anybody we know or we read?
To me, I think all these great gurus, we are studying Ashtavakra Gita, Rishi Ashtavakra, Dattatreya, all these are like that. Or even Parshurama, there's some Anshavatars, they are like that too.